today. I have with me Coach Tania Adams, and I'm Delia Mozer. I'm the Director at Organisation Development Resources, and we're going to be exploring through a series of conversations what it takes to achieve your personal effectiveness and potential. Before I introduce Tania, I'd just like to explore with you that effectiveness is very much about how you define your objectives and how you achieve your objectives, your ability and your capacity to achieve your objectives. Your potential, likewise, is how you define your potential. So with that in mind, I'd just like to introduce Tania, who I've met as a coach who has a passion for personal relationships and helping people to achieve their potential through their personal relationships. Tania, would you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Delia. I'm Tania Adams. I'm a South African coach, and I've been coaching for 8 or 9 years now. And what I've seen in my practice is that when I work with people to achieve effectiveness out there in the world, we seem to always come back to the significant relationships in our lives. And it is true that the more effective and beneficial the personal relationship we have in our lives, the more effective we are out there and the more able we are to reach our potential. So I'm really passionate about bringing this work out into the world so that people can start to learn the skills to enable them to have the relationships they need to be effective out there.
It's interesting, isn't it, that as a coach, we sometimes identify that people do not give themselves the time and efforts or allocate the resources to identify what really matters to them, what works for them.
Absolutely, Delia. Often my clients come into my practice saying they want a particular area of their work life fixed or their career fixed, and what invariably unfolds is that the person is a holistic being, and it's impossible to simply just fix work. We need to fix the whole person and really get into who they are and what their passion is and empower what inspires them, and ultimately it all falls in together, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yes, it is. It's that whole systems perspective, or that the individual cannot be whole unless each of the elements that exist in their life, their work, their families, etc., that system in which they work, are pieced together in a way that really support them. There's been a lot of work done in psychology around identifying this in recent times. So I'm just going to put up a PowerPoint presentation for people to look at while we go through some of this. One moment. So I take it you can see it there. So Tania, in your coaching role, you've mentioned that you're helping out in many different areas. Would you just describe the impacts of your relationship in those areas?
It's well known in studies, and there's been much written about it, that the impact of a poor personal relationship in our lives, it extends far wider than simply our own personal discomfort. A British survey has discovered that people who are in happy marriages live longer, they are healthier, they place a lower drain on state resources. The impact of families breaking up is significant in terms of the psychological impact on both adults and children, and the very real physical health impacts of that. Moreover, people who are in healthy and effective personal relationships tend to have avoid poverty more often and tend to, on the whole, be wealthier in their system. And this extends even to the business world, where we have seen that employees are more effective, less likely to take sick leave, and there will be lower absenteeism when people are in healthy relationship than if their relationships are negative and draining on them. So this has come out of studies. It's not something that we've imagined, that we've just seen on anecdotal evidence. There are in fact studies to show the importance and the impact of a relationship on the world out there.
Mm-hmm. Also, government and taxpayers end up paying for poor relationships when we choose to go down that path.
They certainly do. They certainly do, Delia. The government and the taxpayers pick up the impact of the poor health, And divorce, surprisingly, costs the state and the taxpayer a lot of money. So we'd like to avoid that and channel that tax dollars into something more powerful and more effective.
Yes, there's been quite a bit of work done recently, research-wise and the like, to identify what is actually working for people. So I'm just going to review an approach that's being undertaken in the psychology arena. In recent times, Martin Seligman headed up the American Psychological Society, and in his time there, he identified that in the psychology's alignment with the medical model or a deficit model, we were spending a great deal of time and effort working with people on what was wrong with them and identifying what was wrong with them. And there wasn't a lot of resources being thrown at identifying what really works for people. So he said it wasn't the content itself of happiness, flow, meaning, love, gratitude, accomplishment, growth, or better relationships that constituted what works for people, what he called human flourishing. He said it was learning that you have more of, that you can have more of these things in life, and that's life-changing. So he put forward a model of human flourishing that includes 5 core components. You'll see them on screen there: PERMA, positive emotions, engagement, meaning, and achievement. Now, each of these, at a surface level, when we look at them, makes sense that, you know, we'd need a level of positive emotions, we'd need a level of achievement in our lives. But how many of us really throw resources at things like, you know, happiness, fun, and gratitude, at losing ourselves and becoming absorbed in work, hobbies, being in the moment rather than seeing our workload or the work that we do as a drain and something we suffer to get out of bed for so that we can pay the bills. So in order to be fully effective and to reach your potential, you need to focus your lives on these 5 elements, is what Seligman said. So for our journey of conversations that we'll have around relationships and how they affect our potential and our effectiveness, we should explore some of these along the way. What does it mean to have meaning and purpose in our lives, and how do we know when our relationships are authentic connections and actually contribute to our flourishing?
Sorry, Delia.
That's okay. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely, Delia. I've noticed, and that's why I tell people that we change the world, is that each of us does strive for meaning and does strive for purpose. And certainly when we can identify the meaning and purpose out there and then attach the positive emotions to it, it has the power to make us far more effective.
Yes, I remember coaching a young accountant, and in our first session, I said to him, when was the last time you experienced joy and happiness? And he almost admonished me for asking such a question. For him, he was so disconnected from his own purpose and his own meaning and his own positive emotions that talking about it felt very uncomfortable, to say the least. So his journey was very much about finding, you know, what it was that had meaning for him in life and how to connect with people in an authentic way that made him feel energized, and where to seek out achievement that mapped to those things that had real purpose for him in life. Have you had similar experiences with your clients?
I have had absolutely similar experiences, Delia. In the end, every coaching session that I have with a client starts to taper towards, what are you really here for? What is it that you are bringing to the world? And what would set your life on fire and make life less of a drudge and more of an impassioned, joyous, ease and flow existence? And we tend to wrap up after a couple of weeks together when we do our cycle closing with that conversation in mind. There's something bigger that you're about, and you can live that if you choose to do so.
Yes. Do you experience that sense of this isn't work that I do willingly, but something I come to because I can't avoid it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I frequently have clients who say, I know that there's something, there's more, there's something missing, and I want access to it. I want a piece of that.
Yes, yes, which brings me to the next model I wanted to explore. One of the ways that we find what that is through what it is that we love. And Barbara Fredrickson, a professor in positive psychology, developed a model she called Love 2.0, which is a new lens, a new way of looking at the science of emotions and the mind. And Barbara said that love actually broadens and builds us, so that if we're not getting enough of it, we feel a deficit. We feel a sense of there not being enough, or we're not on track. We don't, there's a yearning that we haven't yet identified and pinned down and made a part of our life. She also put forward a definition of love as positivity resonance, or micro moments of what she called biobehavioral synchrony. That's where your own behaviors and those that you're with, that you're experiencing this sense of positivity with, resonate. So you end up mirroring them, doing the same sort of behaviors. And we've all been there, where somebody said something before when we were in deep, before we did, and we were in deep rapport, and we laughed at the synchronicity of that. The other component to positivity resonance is mutual care, that it brings about a sense of caring for each other. And these things build in us and trigger spirals of or what she calls upward spirals of positivity. And this can happen at an individual, between individual level, at a team level, and an organization level. Have you worked within teams and organizations and found that finding that common ground upon which they can feel that positive emotion has assisted?
I have indeed, Delia. And it's clear when I work with teams that the minute that we tap into that synchronicity, there is an automatic upward spiral. And the results are, believe it or not, even measurable in a return on investment model, where we can track below the line sort of expenses that we are avoiding now because my team has suddenly become synchronistic. They start to pull in the same way, in the same direction, and work towards achieving the same goals. And the concept of mutual care, there's a definite upswing in how can I help these guys get to where we are going together. So love and the upward spiral concepts are not related just to being in the home. They are a human concept which translates into any interaction or any place where there are humans that need to work together to achieve certain goals.
I so agree. The teams and the organizations in which I've had the greatest sense of achievement, in that they've achieved the most, is where they pull together in a coherent fashion. They understand each other, and they have that sense of shared achievement and sharing concern and mutual care, as Barbara Fredrickson explains it. She also identified that it requires safety and physical connection. And this is probably one of the saddest components of a lot of the work that I've done as both a psychologist and as an organization development consultant, in achieving that safety where relationships have been disconnected, and the turnaround from seeing or perceiving another as an adversary, yes, to actually a collaborator, someone who's going to work alongside me and think about what's important to me and where we're going, that whole upward spiral.
Frequently, we do place others in an adversarial role simply because our history has taught us that we are not safe. And the beauty in doing the kind of work that we do in this field is that we can actually reprogram those old wounds and old beliefs that have placed other humans in an adversarial position to myself. And once I'm able to see that that was what happened to me in the past, and it doesn't have to be a forever thing, and I can learn the tools for how to maintain and sustain and repair connection when it breaks, because as humans we do lose connection from time to time with one another, and there's a skill in regaining that, and then we can consistently sustain connectivity. And the more that we're able to do that, the more that the sense of safety is going to grow, and it becomes easier and easier for us to move in that space once again.
Yes, this also factors into Barbara's broaden and build theory. She found that the positivity resonance with each other builds resources in us, and whether it's emotional, psychological, creativity, our ability, our resilience, our ability to weather storms and to come out the other end, having learned or gained from the experience, that the more we can experience these moments of positivity resonance, the greater resources we have to bring to the world. It's very exciting to help someone understand how to identify those positivity resonance experiences and build on them and grow from them and experience those upward spirals. One of the things she does speak to also is the need to experience all of our emotions. There's been a hyper optimistic, if you will, focus on positivity, as if simply focusing on only the positive things is going to lead to your well-being. But in fact, it's really quite toxic if we don't deal with things. And in fact, it's the full breadth and depth of our emotions when fully experienced that makes us healthier and happier. There have been any number of occasions when I've tried to assist and have ultimately assisted individuals in coaching who have focused so strongly on their own positivity or remaining positive on the work scene for their families, men up on their white chargers being the hero for their family and the like, and never really acknowledging their own emotional pain that they've managed to repress for some time. But like all repressed emotions, they find a way out. What's your sense of emoto diversity?
The language of naming and claiming our full spectrum of emotions is not something that we're taught at school level. And in my practice, it is a very strong focus to enable people to simply acknowledge the isness of the emotion. All the way from the children that I work with through to teenagers and adults and in relationships, the power in acknowledging what I really feel, what is really going on, has an enormous release in it. And oftentimes it's simply to just name it and acknowledge it, and then it will let us go. The repression of these things is what makes them hold on to us and disable us from fully embracing and experiencing the nurture and the goodness that comes out of the love and the actual positivity that comes from positive emotions. We get trapped when we don't acknowledge them. Acknowledging our full spectrum of emotions releases us from the ones that are dragging us down and makes us available to receive the ones that are going to inspire us.
Totally. As a part of our conversations later down the track, I hope to be able to discuss what we now know as a science of rebuilding from the most devastating emotions that have us stuck. Sometimes it's an easy process once it's named, once we acknowledge it, to then process it and work it through, but sometimes it's stuck. And when we get to that point, we may need a little extra help, and we'll work through some of those processes that are available to help us there. Just finishing up with Barbara's contribution for this point in time, because we'll certainly be exploring it in more depth in our next sessions. Barbara identified that love in its absence fundamentally alters your biochemistry, your health, your well-being, your effectiveness, and your potential. So it is an essential nutrient to our bodies in much the same way as the fruit and vegetables are that we eat on a daily basis.
This has been proven over and over again even through the studies of neuroscience, that we can in fact alter our biochemistry through the consistent thoughts and emotions that we hold within ourselves. It's not, it used to be considered airy-fairy, but a lot of mainstream medicine is even starting to acknowledge this.
Yes, I'm really pleased that you brought that up, Tania, because there is so much science now around these really critical and important parts of our lives that we used to consider as subjective, as you said, airy-fairy, and we now know them to be essential ingredients. So a lot of what we will focus on together in this journey of conversations will be about tuning into ourselves and others to identify and prioritize positivity into our lives and align with that positivity resonance that we experience. Now, for some, it will be about learning to identify that again. For some, it will be about identifying further or more refined components that they didn't yet know about. And for others, it'll be a nice reminder.
It's good. We're going to take a wonderful journey and explore some possibilities for tools that you may not have understood or been aware were available for you to use to both prioritize positivity and align yourself to the positivity in others as well.
Yes. So we have a decade of research in the field of positive psychology that's proven what it takes to feel happier on an ongoing basis, to sustain it. So it should come as no surprise that prioritizing it into your life and aligning with positivity should be considered important aspects of your journey. So just to summarize the key things we want to look at, and please jump in if you'd like to expand on any of them. We'd like to, in our next session, explore positive emotions. So take Barbara's theory about broadening and building and upward spirals and identify how we go about making that happen. I know, Tania, you'd really like to get into the positive relationships area and aligning hearts and experiencing a coherence between ourselves and others. Would you like to say anything more about that one?
This is the area that I love to play in. This is where I play with conscious relationships. It's a space where I do a lot of work, where I truly believe, and I've seen it work, that we can establish conscious relationships, and the impact of those is where how we know it's happening is I'm free to be me, you are free to be you, and we together as a whole are even bigger than we would be as individuals. And that's my favorite space to play in. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And I think the positivity resonance explanations and explorations we do in the positive emotion sessions will certainly feed into that. I have a strong interest and passion for working in the area of purpose and meaning, especially as positive psychology has identified these areas as so very important for our well-being. And the work I'm currently doing around teal organizations, which are organizations that allow someone to bring their whole self to work, allows me to explore helping people to find their purpose and meaning on the work scene. So I'm looking forward to that one. In the achievement area, we'll look at how we construct our sense of achievement, alignment, and flow, which is when we lose time because we're so into what we want to be working on that it's so engaging for us that we can't let it go. And then there's the area of coupling. Now, it has a deeper scientific meaning, but for the purposes of that session, I think we might focus around flourishing marriages. What do you think?
I think that's exactly where we need to focus. And I know, Delia, that you've got lots of science on that one, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with the world.
Yes, I don't really want to get too into the science because science is one way of knowing, but I know that for some, it really helps them to believe, and it's that belief that will turn them around in terms of really focusing on their own flourishing. One area that's also quite a passion for both Tania and myself is the area of synchronicity. So when you're tuned in to what works for you, you identify in your world small messages that cannot be explained other than something that's really important to you and something you have to sit and listen to or hear or focus on.
The beauty of synchronicity is that those messages are always there, and hanging out with Delia and I and going through these programs is simply going to help you to tune in more easily. And but like getting that radio dial right, you'll get the dial to hear those messages, to know where your flow is.
Nicely said. And we'll finish up in the organizational area, looking at leadership and the positive influence on teams and team relationships and coherence and their own performance, and engagement at an organizational level, what it takes to bring employees into engagement through positive spirals. And that's where I have the greatest passion as an organization development consultant. But I know from your own experience, and you have a wealth of experience in organizations, Tania, that this is an area that you'll have something to say about too.
I definitely have had a lot of experience. And for me, when I say we change the world, once we can change organizations, there's a critical mass can be achieved where we really can make a difference in raising the upward spiral of the globe, never mind just in our own homes or in our organizations.
Now that's a purpose worth pursuing, I think. So Tania, we've come to the end of the presentation that we were going to get through today, and I am excited for next steps. And I'd like to really thank you for joining me on this journey and for coming along today.
It's been such fun, Delia, and thank you for including me. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the sessions.
So we'll see you next week, and thanks again for joining us, those of you who have tuned in on YouTube. Goodbye.